Milling Through History presents The Real Sergeant York. There is perhaps no other American when it comes to the First World War whose name is seemingly synonymous with this conflict than that of Alvin York. Many people have oftentimes said, "Oh, there's Sergeant York over there," but in the modern sense, some people might not necessarily understand who this individual was. To better appreciate and understand this man, we look at his life and realize just how much a common man can make a huge difference in the world. He was born December 13th, 1887, in Fentress County, Tennessee. His family, while being extremely poor, was also extremely devout when it came to their Christian faith. After the death of his father, York would help his mother raise all of his younger siblings, as he was one of the eldest children in the family. Between working on the farm, York would also work as a logger and in railroad construction. And yet, as he grew up in this poor community in Tennessee, York would also discover his own personal demons, as he would become a notorious alcoholic, despite the grander irony of being a regular churchgoer. And while his faith in religion would go ahead and become a bedrock within himself, the First World War would provide an opportunity to go ahead and test his own faith and belief in God. York became concerned with the outbreak of war about the prospect of killing someone. As such, when registering for the draft, he responded to the question of asking for an exemption by saying he did not want to fight, and yet he was still drafted. Having been declared a conscientious objector, York would attempt to speak with his commanding officers about the morality of war and the fact that trying not to go ahead and hurt other people and fighting in a conflict were completely at odds with each other. In response, his commanding officers went ahead and used their own biblical passages to go ahead and prove the morality of war itself. After granting him a 10-day leave to go ahead and think over everything that had been discussed, York returned to the army with a renewed sense of purpose, believing that God wanted him to fight and would keep him safe in the upcoming battles. Upon arriving in France and on the Western Front, York would go ahead and see action with the Allied armies against Germany. On October the 8th, 1918, York was involved in an attack on a German machine gun position, which resulted in him being left in command of 7 soldiers. After successfully taking the German machine gun position, he would turn the guns around on the advancing Germans and prevent them from recapturing the position and giving the Allies an opportunity to move forward. In the process of fighting off the Germans, he would capture 132 enemy soldiers, and upon returning to his own lines, his commanding officers said it seemed as if he was bringing back the whole German army, and his response was, "No, only 132. Following the battle, he would be promoted to the rank of sergeant, and during the investigation of the events of the battle he was involved with, York would be awarded the Medal of Honor. As he explained it, York was under the belief that a higher power was guiding him and watching over him and told him what to do during the engagement. However, whatever the circumstances were, it was undeniable amongst the American ranks York was a hero. Following the war, fame did not immediately go ahead and follow Sergeant York back home to the U.S. Instead, it wouldn't be until April 26, 1919, when the Saturday Evening Post wrote an article about the events of the front lines with Sergeant York and immediately made him into a national hero. Upon being discharged from the Army, York received a hero's welcome back in the United States. And as offers of giving him money and supporting his causes were coming in, York decided to take advantage of the opportunity by using it as a way to go ahead and create an industrial school for children in the Tennessee Mountain region, providing poor young students an opportunity to get an education and better improve their lives. Even though the Great Depression would go ahead and create a number of obstacles for York, he would continue to work tirelessly to go ahead and provide more opportunities for the children of the eastern Tennessee Mountain region in order to ensure that their lives would continue to get better. In 1941, the film Sergeant York premiered, And although it is loosely based on his life and diary entries from the First World War, it is undeniably a bit more of a fictionalized version of his own life, as Hollywood would go ahead and take a few leniencies and make a few exaggerations of events which had occurred. When the Second World War broke out, York attempted to go ahead and re-enlist into the army, but was unable to do so due to his age and health. Instead, he was made a major in the Signal Corps and was used as a promotional tool to go ahead and get people to buy war bonds. Throughout much of his life, though, Sergeant York did suffer from a high degree of health problems. Following the Second World War, he gained a great deal of weight and suffered a series of strokes. By 1954, he was confined to his bed and was going blind. After years of struggling health, he would pass away on September the 2nd, 1964, from a cerebral hemorrhage. As such, his widow would go ahead and outlive him by 20 additional years. And while the name Sergeant York has certainly become a bit of a pun in military ranks, it is still something which is rather unique, as it shows the power of one common man who was able to do something extraordinary and yet never forgot where he came from. For more information, please consider these suggested titles. Be sure to click on the left-hand side of the screen to subscribe to our show, and on the right-hand side for our latest episode. And we will see you again for the next episode of Milling Through History.